Hello, thanks for joining. My name is Jason Etter, and today's session is covering how to build an operations manual in Google Sites. I'll address how Google Sites tackles the need to store pertinent internal documents, policies, and procedures through Profound Cloud's proven best practice in successfully deploying Google Sites for an organization. Little housekeeping. When you have questions, please ask them. I'll try to save some time for questions at the end, but we'll be certain to contact you directly should you not have time to respond. Lastly, this session is being recorded, and I'll be certain to share it with you should you be interested. 4 questions. If you look in the chat session here, I'm just going to hit enter. There we go. Everybody should get that link right there. That's the same link that you see above here that I'm just going to be sending over to you. This guy right here, that's the little link to get you to ask questions thanks to Google. Okay, so let's get this started. In June of last year, now this year actually, we're not in 2017 yet, but I'm eager to get there. Google revealed a dramatic and, quite frankly, a widely asked for update to Google Sites. And I feel that before discussing our philosophy and best practices on utilizing Google Sites as an operations manual, I thought it would be good to address this update and just dive in a little bit about the interface, and which is substantially different than what you might have expected or have seen beforehand, or if you're currently using some older versions of Google Sites. So Google has made a substantial update to the look and inner workings of Google Sites. They've added real-time editing, instant mobile optimization, which is great, complete integration with G Suite, and even an easier interface altogether. The new version of Sites makes the creation of any site as easy as it is to create a Google Doc, a Google Slide, or even a Google spreadsheet. They're adding drag and drop features, intelligent copy-paste functionality that can actually auto-detect bad font colors, like white font on white background, and make it easy to fix it, which is really quite great. It's worth repeating, too, how important real-time editing is to sites. It's become such a common practice in docs, slides, and sheets that I feel that this will really be more of a natural progression in integrating and using Google Sites. Mobile optimization is something I found, quite frankly, a little irritating in the old sites. Although there has been several small improvements throughout the years, it didn't really carry the same caliber of optimization that Gmail delivers, Docs delivers, Sheets delivers, etc. And so whether you're on a tablet now, or a laptop, or a smartphone, your intranet site is going to automatically be optimized, which is so critical in order to make this, when you're making the transition to G Suite, you need to have this mobile optimization. It really is quite important. Another substantial change is sites that will be accessible from Google Drive. So if you're familiar with how you access sites beforehand, it actually was through the app's tray. You'd click on the tray and you'd scroll down for the applications listed as sites. You tap on that, and then you go into sites and can start creating or browsing your organization's sites. Now, Google is actually going to placed sites within Google Drive, making it just another added application to Drive. So very similar, if you're unfamiliar with Drive, Google Drive, very much like Microsoft Office, right, has a text collaborator, has a spreadsheet creator, a presentation creator, like this document you're looking at here is creating Google Slides, and now Google Sites. So I think it's important to point that out, that will be integrated as part of this productivity suite that is included in Google Drive, brought to you by G Suite. For non-Google Site users, the storage will also be lumped into the same quota for Drive and Sites. So this makes the ownership transfers as easy as transferring ownership in Drive should someone leave the company, change positions, etc. And not to get too ingrained into it, but the updates coming to Google Drive are going to make this even more appealing. So there is this early adopter program, and which is a little irrelevant now. I decided to keep this up because not everybody knows about Google Sites, the new Google Sites quite yet, because there's still some overlap between the old version and the new version. So I still wanted to put this up here just to let you know that they did have an early adopter. I talked about it in previous webinars, but I just wanted to share you again that Google's really making an effort to give people sneak previews. And if you look at their blog, you can actually see that there's an early adopter for the upcoming changes for Google Drive as well, which would be very helpful for a lot of you if you're looking and eagerly anticipating some new updates. Okay, so now that you've gotten this glimpse at what's to come with Google Sites, let's discuss utilizing it in order to build out an operations manual. When we as in Profound Cloud looks at G Suite, there's a lot to consider. We have emails, we have files, calendars, forms, images, and all of this relates to different processes and policies that become, well, quickly overwhelming to manage, quite frankly, and maintain in an orderly fashion. Further, each application within the suite adds beneficial efficiencies within every part of your organization. But today, we're going to talk about sites and how it can benefit you by creating a central repository for those processes, manuals, and handbooks. Really a hub for your operations. All right, organizing all of your important operations data is not a simple task. In fact, this is why we have found that this is a task that often gets pushed aside and saved for another day. However, not having a central repository or hub for operations can lead to challenging onboarding and offboarding procedures. Let me just get that slide up there for you. For example, some of you may find the process of onboarding and offboarding very challenging. When someone joins, what are you supposed to do? What information do they need to know, right? These tasks can become overwhelming and quickly, and especially when there's really quite a time constraint, which in my experience when working with clients is a very common task. Either someone leaves the company and you need to offboard immediately. What is that process? What passwords need to be changed? What type of documentation needs immediate restriction, etc.? What devices are still connected to the account? Things like that. The same goes for onboarding, right? And when people join, what are the informations that they're supposed to have access to, right? Where is all the necessary documents, such as the employee handbook? Is it the right version of the employee handbook if it was recently updated? What insurance and tax documentation that needs to be completed on day one? Where are they located? Is it easier to locate, or do you have to go through multiple people, multiple channels to get that information? Is it kind of a jumbled hassle in order to provide the right information? And what kind of sense does I guess, environment does that give this new employee in terms of the company culture? So information can quickly become out of date and disorganized quickly. So I can't tell you how often in previous places of employment it was almost next to impossible to ensure I had the right version of our pitch deck and even media kit. So further, Sites has some ways that they want you to function, right? The way that Sites works and functions today doesn't necessarily answer the challenges HR and organizational leadership are after, right? Like the Sites as it is today. Sites like Drive gives anyone the freedom to create, edit, and share their own content. Although it's great to have such freedom, it might not be ideal for operational purposes. In fact, we hear from leadership that central location to store and access relevant information really is a must. Further, such information is highly sensitive, and only the right people should have access to it, or at least have limited editing capabilities. Maybe just provide view-only access. This is very common for Google Drive users already, right? With doc sheets and slides, you want to share information, but you don't necessarily want to give editing capabilities. So they want the same type of way to ensure information is actually being read, and they want make sure the right people are being notified when new information is available to them. So at Profound Cloud, we were faced with an interesting dilemma here. On the one hand, Google has given us this great tool to create project sites to store and share information from the entire G Suite bundle. However, from a leadership standpoint, the traditional thoughts behind an intranet that required management and permissioning seems to get a little lost. So we think that there's a way to take advantage of the freedom while securing and organizing the information as well. Here's what we'll talk about. Let me just get this out here. There. First and foremost, this isn't a simple plug-and-play task. It requires serious consideration and planning. Without it, you'll end up being no better off than you are today. Next, we'll discuss building out a table of contents. This sounds simple, but is probably the most important part, apart from just the planning itself. This will be critical in architecting your operations site. So we'll talk about the type of content that should be added to the site, especially the dashboard, as the goal is not only to have the site serve as an operational hub, but also a location your staff depends on. You actually want people to go there, right? You can have the greatest site in the world with all the information, but if there isn't a reason or motivation for the staff to use it, it becomes very useless quickly. So lastly, we'll touch on some of our best practices in permissioning within Google Sites, which a lot has been adopted from our best practices in Google Drive. This way we'll make sure the content is both accessible and only editable by those who should. As explained, planning is the most critical piece to this puzzle. If you thought you would get out of it and just download a template from us, I do apologize. You're out of luck. But we will give you some guidelines to help kick the work off in the right direction. Here are some guidelines for the site. An operations site should be owned by a non-human admin account. This is going back to general IT best practices, but it's something that gets overlooked with the newness and capabilities and, quite frankly, the ease of being able to create a site. So that it gets kind of lost that there's still a capability of having someone create this. So you have a non-human admin account create the site itself, and that will allow the permissions to be much easier to manage in the long run. So you want to separate the super user accounts from the day-to-day work. You also want to grant view access so that everyone in the organization can view it. We can get more granular, we will get more granular about editing permissions in a little bit. And then lastly, you want to customize the permissions for this so only the non-admin, non-human account can add or remove who has access, right? You really want to place some large restrictions on the site, right? Just the umbrella that sits on top of what everyone's going to have access. By using that non-human account, the admin account, it's really going to make it a lot easier to manage. So next in planning, you'll need to consider what the landing page should present. So let's get some, there we go. We prefer to consider the landing page for an operations manual more of a dashboard. With this, think about the items that matter to everyone at your organization. This list will probably grow exponentially, so be sure to trim it back when you're done. Simple is always better in this case, so try to keep it less than 10 items at most, and 5 to 6 is actually preferred. Lastly, we like to use the term think like a Martian. What does that mean? So thinking like a Martian, let me just get these out here. Oops. Thinking like a Martian is a helpful metaphor. Imagine that this is the first day on the job, right? In short, you're clueless, and you haven't a clue about anything that around you or the right people to speak with. All you know is what you receive from the interview process and the people that you spoke to and whatever the website says. So what do you need to do? You might ask, do I need to read and sign the employee handbook? How many tax forms or non-disclosure agreements do I need to fill out? Where do I get my computer? Do I get a computer? What's my phone line? How do I get access to my benefits? Are there benefits? Most importantly, where can I go to make sure I understand and learn what is expected of me? All of these are extremely important questions that need to be answered. So thinking like a Martian is really the best starting point because every employee needs to access this same information. The worst thing you could do is assume that every employee knows everything there is to know, which is never the case. So now that you're thinking like a Martian, let's further organize your thoughts. I like to think the same way that I would when architecting a proposal or presentation. I've got a lot of points I want to make, but I don't really have an order to it. So let's try to get them all out and build out a table of contents. When first starting out, it's likely that you've got multiple critical elements that come to mind as must-haves when accessing your operations site. You want to be certain departmental processes, HR documents such as your employee handbook, access to your healthcare portal, sales materials, customer names, prospects, social media policies. Look, it gets overwhelming really quick. And look, all of it is important, but it's obviously too much to organize. So remember, think like a Martian. First, let's figure out what are the top 5 items that impact most, if not all, of your organization. Got them? Okay, well, let's call that the dashboard. So these are items that every single employee should have some type of relevant need to access at some point. Okay? Next, organize all of those other critical elements into simple and intuitive paths. As a guide, we see businesses using client services, internal IT, HR, finance, sales, and marketing to start. And look, you don't have to use these, but we use these as a guide because it starts to help formulate the path, the order of operations that you're trying to design for the site. And look, don't worry all of the time. Don't spend all of your time gathering the must-haves. They will find their place. So in order to get to the next level of organizing your table of contents, you can start to place those must-haves under the umbrella of the top levels. Just get this out here. I think this is helpful to see while I'm talking. Okay, great. So here we go. So for example, as you can see here in HR, you can place your payroll, health benefits, and employee handbook all under there, right? Don't forget too that Google search is built in with sites. So, and this goes back to what I was saying in the previous slide, that if you forget where something is being accessed, just like you would in Gmail, just like you would in Google Drive, just like you would in Google Calendar, just like you would in Google Contacts, Google Groups, etc. If you're looking for something, you don't have to know the tree, the file architecture, the whatever it may be, in order to find the path. You just need to search for what you're looking for. So staff, for example, are going to go to your site. If they need to access the employee handbook and for some reason forget that it's under HR, they can just go to search and type in employee handbook, and they'll be directed to where it is. So don't forget that that capability is going to be automatically built into your Google site. So once you have your top level, sub-level sorted out, the ops site can start to take on a clean and clear look, which is so important because, again, we're trying to make something that is easy to access, easy to understand, and something that a Martian would be able to understand and utilize without much explanation and being able to open it up and see it right there, right? So for example, here's what our ops site actually looks like when hovering over the sales level. You'll see that we have our dashboard, and then we have client services, HR, sales, marketing, facilities, IT, and finance. Under sales, we have reporting, sales process, training materials, and order management. Underneath and within each of these categories are more options, more documents, more processes. But again, we're trying to simplify it, trying to just really make that laser thin pinpoint way of saying, I'm trying to get to my information and I want to hover over and see exactly what I want. I need to know how exactly I'm supposed to, what step am I in the sales process after I qualify an opportunity? Okay, I'm going to go to sales process, and I'm sure I'm going to find that information. Okay? Now that the conceptual architecture is in place, let's discuss how some items that are going to aid in ensuring your staff depends on utilizing this for operations. And one of our tactics is actually the use of dynamic content. So this is something we recommend to all of our partners who have just adopted to Google Sites. Add useful and necessary dynamic content. For starters, stop emailing reports. You should stop emailing reports, period, if you go to Google, but just stop it. Stop it. Have them located on a page within the site for staff to track and monitor throughout the work week. For example, we use an application to manage our SLAs, and our support services, etc. And we have a location within our dashboard that is accessible on our Google site, and it shows exactly how we're doing month to month, and we can compare, contrast, etc. And that is the go-to place to find that information. I don't need to ask anyone for the information. I don't need to request it. Any one of this is completely transparent to the entire organization. We're able to see it and see where we are, and if we want to feel like being competitive, we can see where we rank amongst our peers. So further, add useful information, such as business contact information, right? We keep a running list of our clients and projects in Sites, so it's easy to access pertinent information. You could do this with pipeline reviews or financial discussions. Remember, both Drive and Sites allow for granular permissioning. So, if architected correctly, only the right groups will be able to access the data. I like that our team, rather than asking where something is, knows to go to our operations site now. It took a little while to get comfortable with that, but after we'd forced the situation to say, look, the answer is on operations site, so go there. If that's where you know to look first before even asking a question, making the entire team substantially more efficient. Okay. Another example is to embed Google Drive files and folder structures within Sites. So it's helpful to have a project or process information within a page, and then adding the respective data in Drive. A link to the Drive folder only enhances the experience, or even to have the actual file presented in the site as well makes it more useful. Google makes it very easy to add dynamic content, and the new sites will make it even easier. So you just, right now, in the older version of Google Sites, and again, I wanted to use the older version in this presentation, primarily because there are a lot of you that are probably still using the old sites, and you haven't necessarily adopted to the new sites yet. So I want to share this, and then probably the next time I do this session, I will do it entirely in the new sites, and that way people will be able to reference between the two. So, but the functionality still remains the same. It is completely integrated with Google, with G Suite. All right, so let's talk more about it. So in this particular case, you would just click on Insert, select Drive, and then select the actual spreadsheet. Alternatively, you can also insert charts, graphs, and other living material and never get stagnant. In fact, this is how we use that SLA report that I was just talking about. As you hold your sales meeting, you can get real-time results by pulling directly from the pipeline, the ROI calculator, or other order management spreadsheets that you might manage in Drive. Further, there's a lot of opportunity for deeper integrations. Remember, to really make the dashboard pop with content that's relevant to the whole organization, such as events, mass communications, organizational updates, reports, and live charts. Make it easy by linking to external links that your team depends on by adding a quick reference guide to the health or payroll portals. Make sure that all your work you put in the table of contents is also included in the dashboard. That'll make it even easier to navigate through the operations site. Embed relevant Google Drive files within each page. The more you can isolate pertinent content, the more likely your staff will depend on the site. Place commonly used documents, spreadsheets, and presentations right into the site's page. It's also helpful for staff to learn what it is they're expected to do by scrolling through the processes you've put in place. And don't neglect Google Groups for announcements, and add a place for staff to scroll through them as needed. There's more to add as well, such as storing commonly used templates for proposals, order forms, and other regularly used content. For example, Lucidchart is something our team uses regularly to clearly lay out our internal processes for project work, sales lead generation, and support. We use Google Forms for expense reports and reimbursements, and rather than going through Google Drive to find the form, etc., our team knows to simply go on the operations site and enter the data in order to enter, to obtain a receipt. This can extend for days off requests, support requests, and even new hardware as well. Lastly, we love keeping vacations, days offs, and project events on a calendar for everyone to view. It just makes it so much easier. If you're about to have a vacation, go to the site, see everyone's availability, see, oh, gee, I just realized Tony is also taking off, and he's my second-hand person. I should probably try to plan my vacation for another week. The last portion of developing an operations site is enabling a fluid and manageable authentication plan. So Role-based permissions has been part of IT best practices for a long time. But what we see, since Google Sites tends to lend itself to this sort of ad hoc as-needed sharing method, which can work in a very small team, we see a lot of customers just sharing to individuals on an as-needed basis. And so it looks kind of like this image, right? Phyllis, Sally, Wendy, and Jim, they all have access to this folder, and they can do what they please, right? What we recommend is as follows. Set up role groups. These are groups in the admin panel specifically for administrating and making sure access is granted correctly. Maybe Phyllis and Sally are members of the sales group, and Wendy and Jim are members of the marketing group. What's important here is using groups that are specifically designed for Google Sites. We do not recommend using your basic email distribution groups that you might use for email purposes for this. And this is specifically why, when naming, we give them a name of role, so that there's a clear distinction in the admin panel between your role groups for sites versus your distribution list for Gmail. Another consideration is to ensure these groups are restricted, so they won't be used as email distribution lists by accident. So once you do away with the single user permissions and enable the role-based permissions, you end up with a dramatically cleaner permissions list. You have the non-human admin account who will be owning this entire site, and then permissions given to the specific role groups. Other things to keep in mind. Using role-based permissions makes for a significantly faster employee onboarding and offboarding process. So when Sally comes aboard, we don't need to think about the 17 to 30 folders she needs to have access to, or pages, etc. We just need to understand the role she plays. Keeping a cleaner permissions list is also significantly easier to manage. And the last thing you want to see is a 60-line item permissions list with various users spread across, which makes it nearly impossible to digest, analyze, or report on. And as discussed, using a restricted Google G Suite group is the best practice. We highly recommend to make the above much easier. So once the site is created, then you can deploy it to your end users. More importantly, you need to spend time and resources on how to use it. A couple of really simple suggestions to get started is if you take the sharing link from Google Sites and then shorten it. Use something within your org or Bitly, whatever you'd like, to make a nice short, easy to remember URL so that everyone can easily get to the root folder in Drive. In Sites. When you hire a new employee, part of their training is to give them the link so they can actually access the shared assets. So, for example, when you have a welcome email, hey Tabitha, thank you so much for joining. If you want to access your employee handbook, please do the following. Here is the link to our operations site, and and direct yourself right to the HR portal. Bada bing, there's the link. Pretty good stuff. So what's next? Consider the following. The only way this formula works is if you are 100% invested in the work that it entails. And I don't think that should be looked at as an understatement. You need to understand the value of performing a full audit in order to properly document this new architecture. And then you need to educate leadership and colleagues on the implications of making such a switch and train them. Stop thinking that your organization already has a handle on using Google Sites. They probably do, which is great, but do provide training that surrounds the working and accessing the new site. It can be different, so that's why training is required. They need to see and adapt to this vision in order for it to be successful. Remember, think like a Martian. When Marvin first steps foot at your organization, he's clueless as to who your customers, partners, suppliers, and team members are. Further, he could get easily inundated with welcome messages, login credentials, and other various data points. A simple and easy way to manage operations guide is accessed and managed by your Google Apps admin will substantially reduce the uncertainty of how to communicate, share, and access policies, procedures, and data. If you want more help, well, we invite you to consider partnering with Profound Cloud in order to enable our G Suite enhanced admin support, which includes our hands-on white glove support with dedicated account management to provide monthly platform updates, access your support specialists, and we even offer full staff support across G Suite if necessary. Furthermore, we also offer this actual Google operations manual that I just described to you is actually a project that we can do for you. We do it in several phases in order to make it work. Here's another breakdown of how that would work. After a kickoff call, we'd start to plan and template it out, understand exactly how these different levels of the site would work, and build the template out for you so that you can start to fill it with content. And I think that's really what's important. Here's another way of looking at it as well. Partnering with us, I believe, would make this substantially more successful, and also following through with our support, which is designed to increase your efficiency and provide you with up-to-date understanding of how to utilize G Suite as a whole. It's not just limited to Google Sites, it's limited to the entire suite. So it's something that I think would be very helpful for you to know. So here's a recap. Let's just get this there. Good. Okay. Remember, this isn't a simple plug-and-play task. It requires a lot of planning. Without it, you'll end up being no better off than you are today. Once you get your thoughts together, develop that table of contents. Next, consider what type of content should be added to this site, especially to the dashboard. To reiterate, the goal is not only to have this site serve as an operational hub, but also as your go-to tool that your staff depends on. Lastly, utilize role-based groups for authenticating content with Google Sites. This will ensure the content is both accessible and only editable by the right staff members. Again, please do consider working with us. We understand that this process can be challenging and time-consuming, and we have a lot of experience doing so. Also, as a gift, we have recently published a operations manual white paper based upon the content that I just shared with you today. So I'm going to paste this in the chat, and there you are. That should give you a link in order to access our white paper for free, and I hope you enjoy that content. I'm going to take a quick look at the questions. Let's see what we have here. Okay, I don't see any questions. That's okay. Don't have to ask questions. I just wanted to see if there were any. I don't see any. Okay, I'll stay on for a few more moments, see if there's any questions. Doesn't look like there's any questions coming in. Okay, again, if you have any questions, please reach out to kyle@profoundcloud.com. Also, please take a look at the link I just shared. It's a free free white paper, which would be very helpful. And I think we'll be in good shape. All right. Well, this has been recorded. I'll make sure you get a copy of it. If after the fact you still have questions but you didn't want to ask, you can just contact me directly as well. I wish everyone the best. Happy holidays. Stay warm and take care.